Wander Wealthy Podcast, episode 114 with Natalie Bacon. What is up, my loves? Welcome back to another episode of the Wander Wealthy Podcast. My name is Tess. I'm the host, and today I am joined again for the trice time with my dear friend, Natalie Bacon. And actually, I have to correct myself. She's actually been on the podcast 4 times in total. Once back when it was Words and Money on a little female panel that I ran. It was a long time ago. But yes, she is back again, and I'm super excited because we're really leveling up this time and talking about mindset. Natalie has been a wonderful friend of mine, and I really feel close to her because we've kind of gone through this transition together of being personal finance bloggers to moving into kind of personal development, money mindset, and working with more business owners. She is a certified life coach, and she has some amazing resources on her website, nataliebacon.com, talking about personal development, money mindset, and blog with a full-time job, which eventually she will also be doing a course on building your own business. And it's all specifically marketed and geared towards women. Although the guys out there, you all know we love serving you as well, despite how our marketing is. So Natalie is joining me to talk about her experience over the past year. She was on the podcast a little under a year ago, and it was really that time where she had finally been working towards her first 6-figure year. She had recently left her full-time job to start taking her blog and her business full-time, and now we're kind of doing a catch-up. And what is really impressive is that over the past year, she has scaled her business from breaking that 6-figure mark to going into multiple 6 figures, and now she's really starting to scale towards 7 figures. And she has that mindset and that mentality, which I've noticed just from being a friend, but also a coworker, a peer of hers, and seeing what she's been able to do with her business. So I'm really going to leave it at that. You guys will be able to tell we chat quite a bit, and I just really wanted to have you guys experience some of the shifts that she's had and get some of her expertise straight from her. So here is episode number 114 with my dear friend, Natalie Bacon. Natalie Bacon, welcome back for the 3rd time. You are the first 3rd-timer on the Wander Wealthy podcast. I'm so excited that you're joining us today. How are you, my friend?
Oh my God, what an honor. Thank you so much for having me back. I love it. I truly do love being here. So thank you so much.
Oh, it's good to have you. And I'm excited to talk more getting down the business road and talking about making money and developing an entrepreneurial, but also like a money-making mindset. So we're going to dive into that. However, I'd love for you to catch us up on your life in terms of what's been going on. Because I think the last time we visited, you had just been a couple months into being a full-time self-employed entrepreneur. So what's life been like for you the past, 9 to 12 months?
Oh my gosh, it's been amazing. Working for myself has been such a dream. And I say that so seriously, and I mean it, but I don't want that to be interpreted as it's been just like super easy. It's just now right? It's like now I just feel totally aligned with what I'm doing, and I don't feel the need of wanting to leave, or like I did with my other jobs and careers. Like I just feel really on purpose. I've learned a ton, and I've just been living in Chicago. I cannot even believe that I'm coming up on a year. It's just gone so fast. And I really feel like I'm learning and growing in so many different ways at such a fast rate compared to when I was just side hustling. But I'm so appreciative I did it in the way that I did. I was never in a rush, because laying that solid foundation, and I kind of like think of it as building a house, right? I have like a really solid foundation, and there's like never a thought in my head, would I go back or anything like that? Like I feel really good where I'm at.
Yeah. And you've had a really awesome past year, even like before you went full-time self-employed. How has being like a full-time self-employed entrepreneur, how has that changed your life?
Oh my gosh. It's changed my life in so many ways. It's just, it's so interesting because you you grow and it's uncomfortable and you become this new person and then you settle into it and then it's just what you do. And I am still really good friends with some attorneys, and we're in a group chat together, and we were talking the other day, and they were talking about what they were doing that day and depositions and all this stuff and the meetings and the billable hours. And I just forgot all of those things because I'm not living in it. So it's like, wow, that literally, it was a different version of me and a different life. And same with being a financial planner. So today, I mean, in a practical way, I set my own schedule. I work from wherever I want. And that sounds like really glorified. It is the truth. But also I do work and I actually like working. Like the goal for me is not to make money and not work. I see that like on Twitter a lot. Like I'm not really in the FIRE community. I'm not like into that stuff. Like I like working and I like providing value. So I kind of set it up that way. But I think of money so differently. I think of business so differently. I live exactly the life that I want to, and I still want more, but I want more from a place of abundance. And I think the biggest change has just been in my mind. And because I've had such mindset shifts, my entire like reality has like changed in the last year.
Yeah. And I can't wait to dig into that more. But you touched on something which is like, I think, well, what's really interesting for people who are coming into entrepreneurship, but also those entrepreneurs who are listening, who have been doing this for a long time, when you say, I'm living the dream, I'm able to work from anywhere and set my own hours, that's so awesome. But also it can be really difficult. And like you had said, it's not easy. What are some of the challenges that you've encountered while working for yourself?
Oh my gosh. So it's funny. All the things that I worried about were not issues at all, but I still had issues in different ways. So I remember, and I hear this a lot from entrepreneurs as well, like freaking out about health insurance. What are you going to do about health insurance? I am 33. I'm healthy. I just got on the exchange and I pay, I think relative to what other people pay, I think it's kind of a lot, but I pay monthly and it's like no big deal. Health insurance was like just not even a big deal. In the US, we make it a really big deal and it wasn't a big deal at all. So it's funny because what I worried about wasn't anything to have been worrying about. It was just a waste of my mental energy. But I know, and something I teach is like problems are forever. So it's like, I love the analogy of dating. It's like people who are single want to get married. And it's like, you don't go from being single and not having problems to being married, or being single and having problems to being married and not having problems. What you do is you just trade in your problems. So you go from having single person problems to married people problems. And that's kind of like what it is in every way. It's like the losing weight or the entrepreneurship. It's like, I just went from having problems of like time and energy and money when I was working full time and trying to do entrepreneurship on the side. Like I had problems there. And now I just have different kinds of problems. And they're not the problems I thought that they would be. And I just have like mentally prepared myself for that. So I'm okay with it. Like the other day, I was like, crying over something. And I don't cry like a lot, especially about business. And so it has been like probably like a year. And I was like, oh, this is just a bad day. It's totally fine. And it was about something with my website, but I have so many people doing so many different things for my business that everyone was kind of pointing fingers, and it was really just something that I couldn't figure out how to solve. So the crying was because I was afraid I wouldn't be able to fix it and all the things. So where I'm at, it's like there's always a problem, but it's always solvable. And just reminding myself of that at each stage has been really helpful.
Yeah. And it's funny that you said you forgot when you were talking to your attorney friends, you had forgotten about like those problems, which I totally can. I mean, even if you think about like the things you had to do in school, like I love to think back to like elementary school, because now my nieces and nephews are in elementary school and they go to the same school that I went to. And I'm like, oh my gosh, flag duty. Oh my gosh, lunch duty. Like all these things that we had to do that were like, oh, I don't want to do this today. And it's just, you don't even remember those problems. And same thing when you're transitioning from like, working as an attorney or as a financial planner and working for someone else and having to ask for time off and being like nervous about it or something. And now your problems just evolve. And I love that you shared that. You wrote a blog post recently about what you learned in your first year. Were there any other big learning lessons for you?
Yeah, I learned a lot in my first year. I think that the biggest thing, and we were kind of touching on this with problems, but I think talking about problems and how their problems are forever. But I do think it's also important to really point out that, like, for me, and I think for everyone, it's like, you don't ever arrive, and like happiness is not over there. And we hear that, but it's actually true. So it's like, I've been studying the brain a lot and the human brain. And it's like, people will look at my life, or I will look at someone else's life, and we tend to think like, because they have the result that we want, their life is easy and they don't have problems. And so we think that once we arrive at that place, we're going to have rainbows and daisies and everything's going to be fine. And the way that I like to think about it now instead is like, whatever problems I'm working on, kind of like you were just saying with school, it's like, this is my assignment. So we're all humans and we all have human brains, and whatever we're faced with, like whether it's you're trying to get from 0 to 6 figures, that's like your assignment, right? My assignment is trying to get from 6 figures to 7 figures right now. And someone else's assignment might be losing the weight. And you get to kind of decide what your assignment is. It's your desire. But it's like, I've learned in the last year, I wanted this so bad. And trust me, I love it. I feel really good. And I want more from a place of abundance, not from a place of not having enough, which I think is really, really important to understand the difference between. But it's not like I wake up and I'm just like throwing money around and just like loving, every second. I still have the 50-50. There's still the ups and the downs, and I'm totally okay with it. Like, I signed up for this and I absolutely love it. I think that's like the biggest takeaway. The other takeaway that I really want to mention is like, people definitely say, oh, it's so nice you don't have a boss. And there is nothing that I love more than being my own boss. I will say that. But it is a little bit different than what I see a lot of people do. They'll fall in love with the lifestyle and then they'll quit their job and they'll like go quote unquote all in, but they don't understand that they're in service business. Even if you're in a passive business, like, I wouldn't really describe my business as a service-based business, but the truth is it is. And my boss is the market. My boss is the customer. So if people aren't buying what I'm selling, right, like, I have a problem and I can't pay my rent. And I see a lot of people fall in love with like the lifestyle of being your own boss and, kind of like the fancy stuff. And that's like the effect of the result. That's not like how you get there. So I'm constantly thinking of how I can over deliver in value. And that will never change for me. And I just think that's one of the important lessons of this year for sure. Yeah.
Well, and it's funny because like, when you think about being your own boss, it sounds really wonderful. And even, with my fiance, he's traditionally employed and he has many bosses. And if, we decide, okay, are you going to take the day off or not? Like, for me, it's like, I just have to decide. But for some reason, I almost wish I had someone that would say, you get the day off, because you're right. Like, the market is your boss. So you're like, I have to decide if I'm not going to work today and show up today for them, like all of these people that are paying me, as opposed to the one guy who's in charge of my salary or the one girl who's in charge of my salary.
Yes, you are so right. It's summer in Chicago right now, and this is my first summer here. So I have lots of friends and family coming and visiting. Most of the time it's on the weekends, and I don't really work weekends anymore, so it's not a problem. But last week I had family in, and it just happened that I only was able to work Monday, Tuesday, and half day Wednesday. And like, no one's covering my shift. Like, no one, right? It's like, when they left on Sunday, I went to work and I've been working till like 8 or 9 o'clock to make up for that. And now, of course, there will be a level I get to in terms of revenue where hopefully someone I employ can make up for that. But that is like down the road. And you really just have to be aware, like you said, like, it's your business, and there's like such a greater sense of responsibility when you're responsible for the money coming in compared to when you're at a big company as an employee and you can just kind of take the day off, and it's totally different.
Yeah. It's like, it's the tried and true cliche of like, with great reward comes great responsibility. Yeah. And you have to take higher risk to reap higher rewards. And it just like, it really is like the more risks, the more reward, the more responsibility, the more problems. It's just an up-leveling of it all. But I think it's hard to think about when you see someone else's life and you're just like, that's all I want. That's where I want to be.
Yes, totally agree with that.
Okay, I want to get into the tangible tips round, which is going to be mainly focused on mindset. But before getting some tips around mindset, I do want to touch on your first year in entrepreneurship versus maybe like someone else's first year, not to compare, but just to say like you've had a really awesome first year and you set it up that way so that that would happen. But you're also a coach. How do you help people, you know, not compare themselves to you in a way because you've been so successful?
Yeah, what I like to do, I like to talk about money and I like to talk about how much money I make because I want people to use that as a sense of encouragement and inspiration, just like I used to read those income reports, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it was amazing. It was like, oh, if they can do it, I can do it. I would just believe that. And that was really helpful. So I love talking about making money and how much money I make. I think it's useful, but I think everyone's journey is very different. And as long as you know that, seeing what other people are making can be helpful. So I'll see people who have been doing this longer than me, who don't make as much money than me. And I actually had the same experience where some people who were had started their businesses and only been up and running for like 2 years. And I had been in business for longer and they were making more money than me. And instead of coming from a place of beating yourself up, what I like to do is to come from a place of curiosity. Like, oh, that's so interesting. They must know something I don't know. And to be a student and to learn from them. So that is why I like to talk about business and teach business. If you find yourself getting into that comparison trap, you really got to like close the browser tabs, close the Instagram and clean your thoughts up and do some coaching or mindset work, because then it doesn't become useful. I think using other people's income reports or like reading what they're talking about in terms of money is useful if it's inspirational and it helps you move forward. But if you're using it to beat yourself up, it's not useful at all.
Right. And I think that's really important to discuss before we get into this section, because we're going to be talking about money and mindset and making money specifically, and how you've been really working on your own mindset to get from a 5-figure income to 6 figures, and now you're scaling to 7 figures. So let's dive into it. What sort of work did you do on yourself, I guess, first of all, in terms of money mindset, especially when you were working on getting from a 5-figure blog to now a 6-figure business?
Yeah, so many shifts. So I went from 5 figures to 0 to 5 figures, and then 5 figures to 6 figures. And now I am multi-6 figures and trying to get to 7 figures, right? And I remember in the very beginning, someone saying that what gets you to making $100 a month is not what's going to get you to making $1,000 a month. And then when you're making $1,000 a month, whatever you did to get there is not going to get you to making $5,000 a month. And then whenever you're there making $5,000 a month, the same things are not going to get you to making, the magic number for 6 figures is $8,333 a month, and so on, right? And I remember like believing that the person was right, but I didn't really understand it. I just kind of like stored that in my head. And it turned out to be really, really useful, because so whatever actions you're taking right now are getting you the results that you have. And this is great news, because it means you can kind of get new results if you change your actions. But everyone's like, okay, well, just tell me what actions to take and I'll do that, right? But I'm telling you, if I gave 100 people the same actions to take, I would get 100 different results. And the difference is in the mindset. It's who you're being and how you're feeling to create that action and to create those results. So for me personally, I was in money scarcity. I graduated law school. I had $206,000 of student loan debt, which listeners probably know, but if they don't, I graduated law school, all that debt, and I was in money scarcity. I was just like a naturally spendy, middle-class family, like just not really aware of money that much. And so I decided I was going to learn all about money, and I my mindset was very much, I don't have enough and I need to get more because I don't have enough. And it's going to be really hard to get more and I probably can't get more. And I had this like push pull and I thought those student loans were the reason I couldn't do things and all this stuff, right? And then I started to shift my mindset and I started to do that. Like, I wasn't a life coach at the time. I didn't really understand what was happening, but I started to read personal development books, listen to podcasts, see other people doing it and read their stories, right? It's like they're basically testimonials when you're reading an income report. It's like the testimony of what, they've created for themselves. And I'm like, okay, well, like I am not naturally that smart. I'm like, I went to law school and I passed the bar. Like, I can do this. And I was just all in. And I think that commitment and willingness to fail really helped me shift from 0 to 5 figures. I honestly think from 0 to 6 figures is the most growth and it's the hardest because you have to really hustle to get there. And you don't have to hustle as much once you're at 6 figures because you can just pay other people to do things and you just have more leverage when you have a little bit more money. But the mindset shift, if you're getting the same results that you've always had, it is your mindset, 100%. And I have just been really willing to let go of my identity. I have been willing to give up my identity as a lawyer. I was willing to give up my identity as a financial planner. I was willing to give up my identity as a frugal blogger, which was out of alignment for me from the beginning, but I thought that was the only way. And I remember when I learned all of this stuff about entrepreneurship and money mindset and learning about creating money from abundance, I remember having the thought, and it was true, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to just give up this entire identity. And I see this a lot with some finance bloggers. And it's totally fine if you want to be in that place, but sometimes it comes from scarcity. And when you try to create more money from scarcity, even if you create more money, the result is always more scarcity. So like when the abundance, in the money, like it's just this push pull. And like ultimately for me, what was true for me was that I was really willing to like kind of do the hard work and give up all of my thoughts and feelings and identity of that frugal person and being in scarcity and making up the story that my student loans meant something about me and my future. And I just said, you know what? People can think whatever they want about me. It's totally fine, but I'm going to be in my truth. And I think that that's allowed me to like move forward and kind of shed some of these identities and then ultimately become this new person. And I will tell you, my business mentor said the quote, like, it's easy to give up a crappy life for a great one, but it's much harder to give up a great life for an even greater one. And I'm really finding that to be true. Like, I love the life I created and I'm like multi 6 figures. I live in a beautiful apartment in Chicago. And I'm like, oh, what got me here isn't going to get me to 7 figures. And I can feel that growth and that discomfort because now I have to give up so much of what is amazing, right? It was easy to give up that apartment.
So let's talk about that. What are some things that you feel like you are maybe having to let go of right now to get to that 7-figure point?
Yeah, it's hard. Well, what I'm actually having to give up is the way I think. So, and then that ends up resulting in giving up real things. So for example, I just did a podcast on this actually about creating a being list. So instead of thinking of all the to-dos I have to do, I think about who I need to be as a 7-figure business owner. And then I create all my to-do list. So instead of just waking up and going to the coffee shop and co-working, right? Like that is kind of like this 6-figure hustler mentality that got me to 6 figures. It's like, you're kind of having your own business, like for sure you are, but it's all based on you putting in like the time and the effort, and you're more of like, you're self-employed, you're working for the money, and it's like this hustler mentality that I really loved and was attached to, and I have to give that up completely. And now I have to kind of be this like CEO, and I have like a small team, and I have to have relationships with them and learn how to manage them. And I don't go to a co-working space anymore. No, I do go sometimes and work from coffee shops for sure, but I keep my business as a separate entity that I'm like the CEO of. And that mindset shift is so different than 6-figure hustler blogger that's just packing up and going wherever, whenever, right? It's like, oh no, this business is this entity that I am the CEO of, and it's really, really uncomfortable. I want to make sure, like for coaching purposes, that I'm at home when I need to be at home and on video. And it's almost like taking it more seriously in a different way. Instead of like the 6-figure hustler, I'm the 7-figure CEO.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because, going to co-working spaces and making a comfortable income, making a comfortable salary of multiple 6 figures and having a small team versus a larger team, that is nice, but that's not what you ultimately want. And for some people, that is what they want and they're happy with that. And that is, that's where they like to settle. And I wouldn't call it settling, but that's where they're like, this is exactly what I wanted to create it. But you've always had your sights set higher. And so I love that you have to give up the really, even the good parts about being at this level so that you can get to the next level, which is having to take on some of the less fun things. Like, maybe some people love managing others, but it is also very difficult to manage people and give away your baby that you built and have them do it, right?
Right. It's such a different skill set. And like you said, I think it's a really important lesson here. Some people don't want, like everyone, it's just really important for you to get clear on what you want your result to be. Do you want a small team? Do you don't just keep going to keep going? Think about what's the next evolution of you. Is that, or maybe you just want to be the 6-figure hustler, or maybe you want like a 7-figure business, but you only want 2 to 3 people working for you and you want to kind of stop there. Whereas my business mentor wants to have hundreds of employees. Like, I don't really want that. So I'm like actually really clear about where I want the growth to go and where I want it to stop and what kind of small team I want. And they align well with my personal goals. So, I want to have a family and I want to work 3 days a week. So everything kind of fits in. And I think that is so important because then it's like, oh, they just have different goals than me. Someone who's, in fire, or they don't want to work at all, or they want to retire soon, or whatever it is, like, that's okay. Everyone can have different wants and desires, and that's what makes it amazing. But that's why you also have to just be really careful with who you're following and who you're taking advice from. And I just always encourage people, like, is that true for me? Like, just ask yourself that, is that what I want? And I think that when you can kind of look internally for yourself for that wisdom, that's where you get that confidence from. And that's where you can be more certain about which direction you're going, regardless of what's happening outside of you.
I love that. Is that true for me? Because again, kind of getting back to that, comparing yourself to even, oh, well, Natalie's growing to a 7-figure business. That means I should, because I won't be as good until I'm there. Like, you really have to decide, maybe I just want to make enough money to meet what I was bringing in from my 9-to-5 job. And that's going to make me really, feel however you want to view that arriving mentality. But yeah, it's super important. So I want to get kind of in your state in terms of some of maybe the things that you do to help yourself get into the reaching towards the 7-figure kind of money mindset and mentality. So not necessarily the exact step-by-step, but some of the routines or the tools that you use that you have kind of in your back pocket that you pull out on a daily or a weekly or a monthly basis to help you get there.
Yeah. And I think just to kind of go off what you just said, as well as like, think about what you want next as your next version of yourself. What's the next thing for you? Like, when I started, like 5 years ago, if you would have asked me, do I want to run like a multi-7-figure business with a team? I would have said no. Like, that wasn't my assignment then. My assignment then was to figure out how to make enough money to quit my full-time job. And then you get to that place, and then hopefully you've done it from a place of abundance. And then you're like, oh, this is super fun to set goals. And now I'm just going to do what's next for me and be in my truth. So what I always do is I figure out what result I want, and then I work backward. And I think this is really useful, not only in terms of mindset and money, but it's also useful in terms of like everything. So people will be like, in their businesses, focusing on social media, focusing on like their website, all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, what I teach in business is like, no, we need to start from the end result and work backward, right? It's like the end result is always like, I want to make 6 figures or something like that. And I'm like, okay, let's work backward from there. And like, maybe your Instagram live or your Facebook live actually doesn't even matter at all. Like maybe it does, but maybe it doesn't. It's like, instead of working forward and just taking a whole bunch of action and seeing like where it takes you, I really love starting from the end result and like manifesting that and working backward. And one way I do that really well that I think is more valuable even than like reading books and listening to podcasts, which I think are super valuable. I do listen to something at least once a day, so I'm not discouraging that at all. But that's kind of something we all know and do, especially if you're already listening to this. But to add on top of that is to look for people who have the result that you want and pay attention to how they think and what they say. It is fascinating to me how people talk about their money. Like I talk about my money in such an abundant way. I'm really proud of that work that I've done because I came from such scarcity and such lack. And now I have such an amazing relationship with my money. And you'll notice other people talking about their money in like these negative ways and coming from scarcity. And what you want to do is, let's say you're noticing like you don't have the results with money that you want. Of course, read the books, listen to the podcast, do all that work, but try to get around people who have the results with money that you want and notice how they got their money. Like, and get around the people who did it in the way that you want to do it. So for example, I worked for my business mentor in her business in the last year. And what I learned about becoming a 7-figure CEO and creating money from providing value was like so valuable, and something that like would have taken me so much longer was it just from books and podcasts. I think when you're a part of it, when you see someone doing it, you get that mindset shift in a way that's almost like harder to articulate. So I think getting around people who have the results that you want, specifically with money or business, and being like very aware of their think is more important than paying attention to what they do. Because it's like, oh, she has a team and she uses a system. Like, no, just pay attention to how she's thinking and what she's saying, or he. And I think that will do wonders for you. It's like, oh, Natalie only says really good things about her money. Like, that's interesting. I'm over here bashing my money, saying I don't have enough, like whatever. It's just funny. I always think about that. I go, I'm single and I'm dating, and guys will like on the first date, like talk badly about their money. And it's in like a funny way.
You're like, oh, that's red flag.
I know. I'm like, all right, it's okay, Natalie. Like, don't write them off just because of that. But it's true. It's funny.
They're not as woke. It's okay.
Right. Yeah. Right. Like, they just need to listen to my podcast. It's totally fine. No, I don't.
Little self promo on your dates, right. Like.
Here's my favorite podcast. No, it's true though. Like, you would just be shocked at how much people talk about money, even when they're not in this space at all. People really do talk about it. So I just think that is some of the best work you can do, is just to notice your think around money and get around people who have the results that you want and try to get some of their think.
Yeah. What was something that surprised you about your mentor and how they talked about money, that you were like, especially on the level that you're trying to get to, and you're like, oh, damn.
For me, the biggest lesson and the biggest surprise was how much she separated out the math from the drama. So it's like, money is the math, and then all of your drama about the money is just thoughts, and they're separate. So it's like, if you made $1,000 this month and you wanted to make 8,000, like, what you make that mean is totally optional. All the facts is like, you made 1,000 and your goal was 8,000 and you missed the mark. And like, what I see so many people do is like making it mean all this stuff about them and their abilities and all this stuff. And she was just like, oh, like, maybe I should change a headline, or maybe like I should, you know what I mean? Like, maybe trying different things. She never made it anything about her in terms of revenue. And she was really, really like confident in her ability to just try a whole bunch of other things and make it work without ever making it mean anything about her or her business.
Yeah, I love that. I just did a workshop call yesterday, and it was like all about neutralizing your thoughts around money instead of, attaching emotions and feelings about it. And how do you lift out of that so you don't make it personal, right? Because we're all like, oh my gosh, this means I'm a terrible person and a bad coach and a failing entrepreneur.
It's so true. I think that's some of the best work you can do. I teach that in Money Mindset for Her. It's my money mindset course. It's like money is actually neutral and you get to decide what to make it mean. And I love that. When I learned that, there was so much freedom for me because I felt so much pressure to be really frugal. And that was just out of alignment with me. And I had to learn how to create money and also to have money and to have an amazing relationship with money in my own way. Like in a different way than being frugal, so to speak. Like that just didn't feel right for me. And now I feel really confident about how I do it in my own way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good point. 'Cause like being frugal is neither good nor bad. It's just a way of living and it's not your way of living.
Exactly. It's so amazing. It's like you don't need to be frugal, but you can be frugal or you cannot be frugal. It's totally fine. Like you're amazing and I'll love you just the same. Like you have to decide for yourself. But yeah, right? It's like everyone has their thing.
Awesome. I love this conversation. Let's get into the money round where I ask you a little bit more personal questions about your money. And specifically, since your business has really amped up, going from kind of breaking that 6-figure mark. I think when we had last talked, you were like just getting over that to now getting into multiple 6 figures and going towards that 7 figures. What are you spending money on? What are you saving for? And how are you making money?
Yeah. So I make money from my business, and the more money I make, the simpler it gets, which is amazing. Yeah. Like when I wasn't making money, I thought money had to be super complicated and I had to know like all the details of the stock market all the time. Like you just felt this like ignorance almost. I felt this like lack of knowledge, and for sure everyone else knows how to do it right and I don't. Like that was like for sure. And the more money I make, and I'm a certified financial planner, like the more I know about money, the more I realize a lot of it's just BS, and it's totally fine. You can just do things really simply and be really, really successful. You can make a lot of money. You can manage your money from abundance and have a lot of money, and you can spend money on things that are valuable to you. And that's a kind of like as simple as it gets. And I don't keep a whole bunch of different accounts. I have like my checking account, my savings account, and then I have like my business checking and my business saving. Like I just keep it as simple as possible. Personally, I don't get into the credit card hacking. Like that to me is just another form of like mental chatter that I don't want to do. I know I'm leaving money on the table, but I'm actually okay with that because of how much time and energy it would take me to do. It's just not something I'm interested in. And I've thought about that. So I think this journey has given me the confidence to make my own decisions with respect to money. So I make money primarily from selling online courses and my membership coaching program, which is launching right now. And I plan to make that at least 50% of my business revenue. And then I'm going to incorporate live events next year. So I'll sell online courses, membership coaching, and live events as my revenue streams. And I spend my money just like on normal stuff. I think the biggest splurge that I kind of like to talk about, I think it's important, is my hair. And that sounds funny. Why is that important? Because I wanted hair extensions for the longest time, and I never gave myself permission to get them because of what I thought other people would think about me. And when I decided that I was going to get hair extensions and I just did not give an F about what anyone else thought about it, everything in my business started to grow. And it's not because of the hair, it's because of the mental shift. I was just like, F it, I'm doing it my way, right? I'm like, I got the hair extensions, I repositioned myself, I did the photo shoots, and now I did not expect that to create money, right? It wasn't like pretty web design makes money. That's not what I'm saying, but I am saying like that confidence from within and to spend money in my own way, in a way that like made sense to me, even if I knew I was going to be judged for it. That's true confidence. And I think That's kind of why I like to mention it. It's like people get really weird and shameful about their splurges. And it's like, no, I spend money on hair extensions and I'm going to forever. Like, I love them. And I save money. I like saving money to have money. Of course, there is the saving of money for a purpose, right? There's the saving for retirement. There's the saving for a house. I'm not saving for a house right now. But right now, I like to just save money to have money. And what I've found a lot is that we focus so much on how to create more money. And we don't talk a lot about having money. So someone will, right? Like someone will create a lot of money and then they will immediately spend it all, even if they're spending it on like something that we would quote unquote call responsible, like an investment or real estate or retirement, but like almost immediately it's out of the bank account. And what I like to teach is how to have money, just to have it and get comfortable being someone who has it, because that's the evolution of it. If you're not used to having money and then you create a bunch of money, you like have not built your capacity to have it, and you're probably going to want to give it away. And I like giving away money, but I'm very careful to do it after I've had the money. And I do it from a place of abundance and generosity, not from a place of feeling like I don't deserve it or like I have too much of it. It's like a very subtle but important distinction.
Yeah, no, that is such a good point to point out to people, because I think a lot of people are like, yeah, of course, if I made, it's the whole like winning the lottery thing. When people win the lottery and then they blow it all, it's because they haven't ever had the capacity to hold on to it. And so that can be uncomfortable, even though you would never think that that would make you uncomfortable. Like subconsciously you are uncomfortable and you're like, get this out of here.
Exactly, because you don't feel like you deserve it, and you think that you need to feel like you deserve it, and you don't need to deserve anything to have it. You can just have money, right? It's like having friends or losing weight and being skinny, or like what everyone has their own, or having a partner as well. Like there's the creating and there's the having and there's the giving. And what I see people do is like they'll create something and then they'll self-sabotage because they're not used to having it, and they'll give it away or they'll push it away from a place of scarcity because they don't understand that that's what's happening. And so I really I focus on practicing having my money. I love having my money. And then when I give it away, I really love feeling generous and giving from a place of generosity. I just make sure I do it after I've felt really good about having it first.
Yeah, I love that. I had an experience where I had been struggling with the deserving of even just financial rewards. And it was so funny because I was talking to my fiance about it, and I don't know who brought it up, but someone brought up like, oh, well, I don't feel bad for being so good looking. I was born this way. And it's like, that's a good point though. Like, it's not like you're like, oh, I don't deserve to be so good looking or something. Like really good looking people don't feel bad about that. That's just, you don't have to deserve anything to have something.
Yes, that is such a good point, right? And I actually do this work like on myself. Like I really like dressing up and putting on makeup and looking nice. And it's, it always goes back to like childhood and your beliefs and how you've like rewired your brain. And so growing up, my mom always was dressing really nice and putting on makeup, and like she's always just looked really polished. And so I just kind of programmed in my brain like I want to do that. And so I feel really confident having my body and like looking nice, and I never like question it. I'm never like, oh, I don't deserve this. Like I don't, and it's not from a place of arrogance, right? I don't think I'm better than. And I use that as a comparison. I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta get used to having a lot of money and just have it and know that it has nothing to do with deserving it at all. So just I always like encourage people to pay attention to if you're thinking like, oh, I didn't deserve that anyway, and you push it away. Like that's just not useful and unnecessary. You can just have it just to have it. You don't have to deserve it at all.
Awesome. Gosh, we could talk about this forever.
I know. It's so fun.
We're going to go into the quick and dirty Q&A to wrap it up. And my first question is, what is one totally random, can't even be business related thing that you just can't stop thinking about lately?
It is business related, and it's something that's not going to be surprising, but it is 7 figures. Like I'm constantly looking at my revenue, and it's coming from a place of curiosity. It's not coming from a place of lack. So it's actually super fun, but I'm constantly like, oh, I only made, not only, but like I made, you know, whatever amount this month, whether it's 20K this month or 30K this month, whatever. I'm like, that's so interesting. I'm trying to get, you know, the magic number for 7 figures is 83.3K a month. I'm like, oh, that's so curious. Like, what would I be doing? Like every day I have it on my board. Like, who am I being? I'm being a 7-figure business owner, and I make decisions from there. And that really gets me into the right state. So that's honestly like what I'm thinking about like the most in terms of like every morning, especially when I'm working. Like, I guess I'm really enjoying working less. That's something that I have really learned to have, is like free time and Chicago and fun and friends and dating. Like, it's not like I spend a ton of time thinking about it, but I just feel more content and comfortable having more of my time back than when I was like in that hustler mentality.
Yeah. And now we're going to make this a longer thing, but I think that's an additional kind of deserving thing is probably, I don't know if you struggled with this, but I've struggled with it in the past, is like feeling like, do I really deserve to work less than I was before or than my peers are? And that's a similar thing to like deserving and being just comfortable with having money, is like deserving and being comfortable with having more free time.
Yes. And then are you equating work to money, right? So like, right. I always think like, oh, if I want to make more money, I need to provide more value, but I'm never thinking I need to put in more time. Right. I'm never thinking I need to work harder. But when I was getting to 6 figures, that's exactly what I was thinking. And I was like hustling really hard. And so I never like get into that place of deserving with respect to business. And I think if you're really in a business where you think you're over delivering in value and you're helping change people's lives, it's a little bit easier to do because you're like, oh my gosh, the more money I make is just a reflection of how much I've helped people. And that feels really good versus like if you had cigarettes you were selling or something. I don't know.
Well, some people get a lot of value from cigarettes.
They do, right? That's their experience of the world, not mine, right?
Yes. Okay. Who is your favorite person to follow on social media?
The Royals, all of them. I love them.
That's supposed to be your random thing that you think about all the time. Come on, I know that.
Right. I'm obsessed with Kate Middleton. I didn't think anyone could come close, but Meghan Markle has done just a fine job being a close second, and I love them. And I love them just for fun, the way I compare the stereotypical guy loving like sports. And now I know lots of like women love sports, and I love sports for fun, like the entertainment of it, but I don't actually love like the details of it. But when it comes to the Royals, like I am all in, like Twitter scrolling, like I am checking out.
You're like naming all of their staff members.
Yeah. I'm like, oh my God, it was just William's birthday. All things. Like, I love it. It's ridiculous.
Oh. I don't know if I should be worried about you or just, accept you as you are.
Accept me as I am.
I do. What is your favorite, like number one recommendation for an entrepreneurship book?
This is such a hard question because at every phase it changes, and I just
that's a good point.
Can't handle it.
In the point of where you've been, the thing that made the biggest impact on you from 5 figures to 6 figures.
5 figures to 6 figure. Expert Secrets is really good by Russell Brunson, and I say that, and .com Secrets, his other book, is good as well. But I say that because it's really like a textbook, and I think you can do this with any really good business book that's more tactical and less philosophical. Mm-hmm. And I really just want to encourage anyone listening, if they've read that, like listen to it again, or read it again. I live in Chicago, so I'm always walking, so I listen to a lot of audiobooks. And I have listened to Expert Secrets probably 3 times, and I plan to listen to it again because at each level of my growth, there's always like something new I'm picking up. So I'll talk to someone and I'll see that they're having a problem, and I'm like, oh, the charismatic leader, like the value ladder, like I can see their problem really easily, and I'm always thinking back to that book, and I like recommend the book, and they're like, oh, I've already read it. And I'm like, that's so interesting. Like sometimes we just read books to like, we hurry through them, we like pick up a thing or
like
two.
Check it off the box.
Exactly. We're like, how many books can I read? I need to read all the books for sure. Everyone else knows all the answers. And instead, it's like really dive deep into like the very best books and try to apply that stuff. And I think it can change your entire business. I really get a ton of value from Russell Brunson. I think I call him like one of the OG marketers, original gangsters. He's just so good. So good.
He reminds me of like every guy I went to high school with. So it's so weird because he's like this internet marketer. And then I'm like, wait, I went to high school with him. I didn't, but he just like, he has that persona. I don't know. It's like kind of like a Midwest wrestler persona.
He does, right? Because I'm from Ohio. He just like, you could drop him in the Midwest and he just looks like he would fit in perfectly. And I love that about him. And then you're like, oh yeah, this guy is like, his think is so big that you just have to like remember that when you see him. It's so funny. I love it.
Yeah, it's incredible. Okay, what is the best piece of money advice you've been told that you'd like to pass along?
So the future with money only exists as sentences in your head, and you can think anything and make up any future you want right now. Totally giving you permission to do that. I think when I learned that, I just decided to drop all of the BS about my past, about student loans, about what everything meant. And I was like, I'm going to create my money future from my future. And my future only exists as sentences in my head. So everything I think and feel now is going to create that reality for me. So instead of being like at the effect of my environment, I want to cause the results in my reality. So that's like what I constantly am manifesting all the time.
Yeah. And for the skeptics of this whole like create your future from your future and manifestation, try it. You have nothing to lose. So if you're skeptical, then just do it. Why not?
And also, yeah, I think that's really good advice to just try it. But notice that you can't just think something and have it happen. You have to actually like believe it and feel it, right? It's like wanting it versus wanting to want it. If you want to want it, you're not going to have the feelings in alignment with it. You have to actually be in that space. Like I was already a 6-figure blogger in my entire being before it ever appeared. And I took action from that place and then it appeared. And I remember when my blog coaches called me freaking out. They were so excited for me. And I was excited too, but they were almost like surprised and overwhelmed with like excitement. Whereas I was like excited, but it was like, of course, like I've been this person and you already do this. And I always think that's really helpful for people who are skeptics. It's like, look at your past and how you created those results from thinking in like for sure certainty that you would get them. And I think that is always surprising to people. And they're like, oh yeah, I did expect that. And then I created it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like you rarely create things out of being doubtful that they'll happen.
Right. Or they'll just be like random and it won't be sustainable.
Natalie, this has been such a blessing for all of us to hear your truth and hear your expertise and all the fun knowledge that you have to share with us. Thank you for joining us today. I'd love for you to just tell us where we can follow along, sign up for your stuff, and hang out with you further.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be the third person on here, the first time on here. It's so fun, right? Yeah, if you just go to nataliebacon.com, you can find everything about me you ever wanted. I do have a free online business course and a free money course. If you go to nataliebacon.com /money, money mindset course, with dashes, you will like money-mindset course, you'll get into that one. And same thing for online business. If you go to nataliebacon.com /online-business course, you can jump in there. But otherwise, the podcast, websites, Instagram, all the things.
Cool. We will link those up. Thank you once again for joining us. This was a blast.
Thanks, Tess.
And that's a wrap. Episode 114 with Natalie Bacon. I hope you guys loved that conversation as much as I did. I'd love to hear from you. We would both love to hear from you. So if you were tuning in to this episode, go ahead and take a screenshot, share it on Instagram, and tag me at Tess_Wicks, and Natalie at Natalie R. Bacon. If you want to get access to some of Natalie's awesome programs, you can head to the show notes by going to wanderwealthypodcast.com/podcast/episode 114. I'll link up the freebies as well as her programs, and I will also include some of the resources that she's mentioned in this show as well. All right, my friends, that's it for this week. Once again, I'd love to hear what you thought of this episode. Go ahead and add me on Instagram at Tess_Wicks and send me a DM of what you thought, what you'd love to hear more of on the podcast, anybody you would love for me to reach out to interview, and what it means to you to wander wealthy.